Architecture Codex. If you want to see more, like, comment, share, and most importantly, subscribe.
In New York City in the 1920s, skyscraper construction was dominated by setback laws and terracotta. Fast forward to the 2020s and 111 West 57th Street, and we see that once again, skyscraper design is dominated by setback laws and terracotta. I'm just waiting for them to bring back spats to men's fashions. The new tower is the slenderest skyscraper in the world, 24 times higher than it is wide. The real estate listing says the top floor is the 91st story, but the building is only 84 stories tall. This is a common New York City real estate trick, as about 7 stories are simply skipped when they number the floors, and there's nothing illegal about that. It is currently the 3rd tallest building in New York City, behind One World Trade Center and Central Park Tower. But we have seen that such claims as tallest this or tallest that are fleeting at best. At least 3 more towers taller are already approved to be built or are under construction in New York City. It's a shame to have to say it, but I am officially declaring that being among one of the tallest buildings in the world is now boring. I need some other challenge to pique my interest, and being the pencilest of pencil buildings may not be sufficient. So here the intrigue is perhaps how they handled the existing historic Steinway building that existed on this site. Nearly every piano virtuoso in the 20th century walked through this building, and it was declared a landmark in 2001. The Steinway building was completed in 1925 and was just 16 stories tall. It was designed by Warren and Wetmore, who were the principal architects on Grand Central Terminal, Architecture Codex number 21. It was the company headquarters, which had rehearsal studios, a concert hall, and a showroom for the famous piano manufacturer whose history goes back to 1820. Manufacturing remained in Hamburg, Germany, and Astoria, Queens, New York. The Steinway building facade on 57th Street was the formal entrance, and it is traditionally adorned with limestone and concrete cast sculptures. The north facade on 58th Street was the service entrance where pianos were delivered, and it has the less expensive detailing using rusticated limestone, brick, and terracotta. Terracotta, literally earth-fired, is baked clay and has a history that goes back to the earliest parts of civilization, with pottery and architecture some 6,000 years ago. It reached a peak in the Roman Empire, which had an extensive brick industry, often firing custom shapes for certain kinds of architecture. But brick and terracotta were considered cheap and boorish forms of building and were frequently covered up with plaster or marble. Even in recent times, while some Richardsonian brick buildings proudly displayed their clayness, in most buildings it was disguised as another more venerable material. In early skyscraper construction, terracotta was usually used as a cheaper material which they tried to pass off as carved stone. You will find it used in many buildings such as the Flatiron Building, the Woolworth Building, and the Channon Building. Terracotta could be cast in molds and baked in a kiln for structural stability, and it was non-combustible. It was the poor man's way to get that ornate carved effect that the Greeks got using a chisel and a hammer. And it could be mass-produced, which means it cut costs substantially. It was the aluminum or vinyl siding of its day, a cheap knockoff of what the architects really wanted to use. By the 1950s, you could buy glazed wall tiles for public buildings in an array of color. It was popular for non-combustible construction well into the 1960s, but then gypsum board, aka sheetrock, began to replace it as a lighter, easier, and thus less expensive way to build non-combustible construction with fire-rated capacity. Since then, terracotta has gained new respect in real estate and architectural circles. Like tin ceilings and exposed brick walls, terracotta has overcome its shameful past to be heralded as a unique building art form. I think it is because it is elemental, the earth, and earth, wind, fire, and water. So I was extra curious when I found out that both 1 Vanderbilt, Architectural Codex video number 26, and 111 West 57th Street proudly noted that their really tall facades featured exterior terracotta panels. So advances in technology and understanding the past has made terracotta panels more viable for skyscrapers. Clay's malleability prior to firing makes it ideal for unique designs, and once fired, it is as tough as granite, but much lighter. Used on modern aluminum framing, they can avoid the failures of the past caused by casts that were set rigidly in mortar and subject to moisture damage. Thermally resistant terracotta can help reduce heat gain on an otherwise totally glass or metal tower. And the panels I have seen on 1 Vanderbilt and the Steinway building avoid the thin, delicate forms imitating carved stone that are easily broken off. So I don't feel the need to wear a hard hat when I walk by these buildings. New York's setback laws have had great influence on the city, and even those buildings like Lever House,
Architecture Codex number 39,
and the towers along the Avenue of the Americas, pronounced 6th Avenue, defied the laws by sitting back instead of stepping back. The 1916 laws have never been revoked, but they appear to be malleable, much like terracotta before it is fired. The PR people for the Steinway Tower say the shape of the floors, stepping back as they ascend, was influenced by the setback laws. Since the tower occupies only the middle third of the Steinway building that stretches from 57th to 58th Street, it is already set back from the street before it ascends, and it appears the setback really starts around the 40th floor. The tower also occupies the lot east of the old Steinway building, giving the tower a bigger footprint from which to set back. It is hard for me to judge that by saying the tower's form meets the setback laws, the designers are bragging or apologizing. The structure employs what are now standard elements in tall buildings. Structural engineer Sylvian Marcus used interior concrete shear walls to resist wind forces, and has an independent facade structure. And like 423 Park Avenue, Architectural Codex video number 12, it uses open reinforced mechanical floors to allow wind to pass through it and reduce sway. And like other buildings, it has an 800-ton mass damper at the top. And so if the shape is determined by zoning and structure, then it appears for the architects to distinguish the building, they would need to decorate it differently. They claim the use of terracotta and bronze filigree wrapped around the building make it an example of a classical skyscraper. I am not sure that I see that. And though they say the design employs 26 types of wavy terracotta forms with 6 different shades of cream, that subtle detail is completely lost at those distances above the ground. The best design decision might be keeping the Steinway building so people have something interesting to look at while at the address. One of the things I really enjoy about New York City is the way old and new buildings can exist side by side. So the approach taken at 111 West 57th Street is a viable way to make things happen. With a little push because of the landmark status, the developers found a way to revitalize a classic gem of a building with their new construction and make the entire operation economically viable. Economic viability with adaptive reuse is still the best way to make sure we preserve our better buildings.
The Steinway Tower was designed by SHoP Architects, which is a firm formed by 5 partners in 1996, recognizable as a group, but with no standout media-hogging personality. A lot like single-word 1970s mega bands, such as Yes or Boston.
Their most notable work prior to the Steinway Tower might be the Barclays Center Arena in Brooklyn, part of a larger development project. They seem to be the favorite of developers, and are working on other projects such as the South Street Seaport and the Domino Sugar Factory, both in New York. Back to the terracotta. Advances in technology have allowed builders to return to this most ancient form of building. By adding stainless steel or aluminum framing and pins and shimming with neoprene or other spongy materials, the industry allows terracotta casts to be featured in all kinds of facades and encourages many different kinds of form, texture, and color. It is not just for faux stone anymore. For architects, it can mean an almost endless palette with which they can design. While terracotta roof tiles are time-tested, I wonder if all the permutations of design that are possible and we have seen will stand the test of time aggravated by winter. Looking towards the future, one can see the confluence of two architectural trends. In addition to the greater use of terracotta, we have seen biophilia, that is, life-loving buildings being designed. They feature habitats for living organisms such as trees, plants, birds' nests, and beehives, and they have become a popular objective as urban planners realize that people actually like the natural world. But most of the images you see and the proposals being made are greatly exaggerated, and the real world may never get that green. These buildings actually demand a lot more structure and construction and may prove themselves too expensive to truly be sustainable. But perhaps we will know that both technologies have reached their apex when we finally see a 100-story tall residential chia pet. I'm Michael Molinelli, and this is Architecture Codex.